Well, hey everybody, and welcome to this latest edition of the Lunch and Learn, brought to you by ATSU University's Information and Technology Services Group. My name is Joe, and I'm glad to be with you today, and we're going to bring some more information on tips, techniques, and trivia about what's going on at ATSU. I'm not Brian, and I apologize for that. I know that that's a sore point for most of you. But I did get this cool mug, and it turns out the penance is I'm going to be joining you for the long term in hosting the Lunch and Learn series. I'm excited to do that, and I'll be expecting more colorful coffee containers as we go along. Now, we've got some good stuff for you today. Clinton Normore is going to be with us talking about deconstructing bias. We've also got another very popular Microsoft Office tip from Beth. And then, we get to give away the first lynda.com mug to the person who completed the most courses on lynda.com in the last month. That's going to be cool. I don't even know who it is. It's a sore point that we're going to discuss later. And then last, we got Dustin Usher with us today, and he's going to talk about computer security. Basically, just scare the dickens out of you with all of the nasty things that are out there, and then tell you how to fix it all and not to worry about it. We'll bring it full circle. It's going to be a good show. Before we begin, I just want to remind you this broadcast is live at live.atsu.edu. You can submit comments and questions actually live during the program. If there are things that come up that you'd love to hear explained, or if you think of questions on subtopics maybe we didn't cover, we would love to be able to address those and answer them during the show. So do take advantage of that and be active on those little chat windows. And with that said, we're going to go to our first guest. With me first is Clinton Normore. He's ATSU's Diversity Director and starting your second year in that position. And you're here with us today to talk about deconstructing bias. And I have to say, even with the title, I'm already sort of lost as to the subject matter, so you're going to have to start us off slow. But I'm going to give it over to you, and you let us know what's going on.
I'll try and do that. Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. The topic is deconstructing bias, and we will go through some slides as I talk to kind of walk us through this idea of bias and our idea as terms of ATSU of cultural proficiency. The first slide really is kind of the objectives in terms of where we want to get to, those things we want you to discern as a result of our conversation today. One is obviously the construct of bias. You can't know about deconstructing if you don't know how bias is actually constructed, and we'll touch on that briefly. And also the diversity idea for the university in terms of the model we use, cultural proficiency, which really is valuing diversity. And then we want to talk about some barriers, some challenges that make it difficult for us to reach that diversity idea, and the concept of culture in terms of this whole model of cultural proficiency. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the old adage, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And we talk about bias. When we talk about bias, we think of automatically discrimination. So which comes first? Is it bias or is it discrimination? In the next slide, we look at the more poignantly towards the idea of bias and its construct. And bias is really a pathway. Prejudice is a piece, a component of bias. And it is really those favoritism towards one thing or another, and often considered by those who are on the receiving end as being unfair. The next slide. When we look at the idea of bias in terms of what it means, bias can also be unconscious, and most often is, particularly when we talk about the reaching discrimination. Most often it's perception, and those who are being biased towards one group or another may not know what they're actually doing, and it really is an association and derived from learned behavior. It's making assumptions about people in essence. And then the next element of the idea of bias towards discrimination is stereotypes. It is a generalization. We all of us are biased in some way, shape, or form. And these biases are framed by stereotypes. These allow for individual differences, socializations. We always talk about categorizations, even our society and how we determine one group or another as a categorization. So they can be positive and negative and can help inform us in terms of being more proactive towards how we broach different groups. And the next slide, we talk about prejudices. Prejudices are prejudgment. They are rooted in attitudes about groups or people. And as social scientists often believe that prejudices arise at the toddler stage, that most people form prejudices at that point. And there are many studies that suggest by 3, children have some identified racial slurs and understand prejudices in that regard. In the next slide, we go to the idea of discrimination. That is the cultivating root of what makes bias so profound, is the idea of discrimination, where we don't want to be as an individual, most often where we don't want to be as a universities. We don't want to be discriminatory. And these are behaviors. So bias is an attitude, it's a belief, it's a learned impression about a group or a person or one thing. But the behavior applied to those biases are what lead to discrimination. The act of being biased, the act toward being biased. And I often tell the story about bias of me being a police officer. And as a police officer working a gang unit, I would have biases toward those persons who were wearing gang paraphernalia, often African American. And that was okay in that context, because that led me to interact with those persons from a safety standpoint. However, how I behaved once that contact was made influenced the perceptions of those persons whom I were interacting with as to whether or not I was being discriminatory and overly biased in that interaction. So as long as I treated those persons with utmost respect, then it eliminated that factor of discrimination, even though going into that encounter I had a significant amount of bias towards those persons. Often bias is in the next slide, often bias is demonstrated by microaggressions. As I said before, each of us have biases. Just like an act or an overt act toward those highest biases or discrimination, microaggressions are those subtle statements, those subtle practices, applications that allow one on the receiving end to be perceived as being discriminated against. Oftentimes, as I said, it's subtle, rarely overt, and more often than not, those persons who are creating those instances of microaggressions are unaware and have to be informed by the persons receiving those comments that they're being treated in that fashion. And that is what we'll get to later, is the idea of cultural proficiency, the model of the university in terms of the diversity idea and how we interact in different cultural settings.
Now, that's a really, okay, so I was starting to say, well, that's a really good setup. I appreciate that, but good is going to be weird because you said things about unconscious bias and about commonplace sort of buried micro, and I'm going, what everybody else is doing, I'm sure I'm going, crud, what are my biases? Yeah. How do I even figure those out? And I assume we're going to get to some of that. We're going to take a quick break though, because I'm very excited to announce the first winner of the lynda.com mug. You know, it turns out everything tastes better in a lynda.com mug. I don't know if you knew that. But they won't even let me say who it is because they made a fancy cartoon animation thing. So we'll just watch that instead. Here it is. Oh, yeah, that's good. It's good. Hey, so congratulations to Steve Emland. You can pick up your coffee mug there at the help desk. And the race begins again for the person in March who completes the most courses on lynda.com. It's just not about the competition. Lynda.com is an incredibly comprehensive resource that we hope you're taking advantage of. And, it's not just for program type help. There's an incredible library of leadership development courses in there. Pretty much any aspect of your career or about your professional life that you'd like to improve upon, lynda.com's probably got a library of resources there for you. So you can find a good excuse, no matter who you are, to spend some time on there. Now, I know you're thinking what I'm thinking. I need to get back to this deconstructing bias thing because I want to know what mine are, or at least how to figure them out, and figure out if I'm doing any harm and how I can avoid that or undo it. And so, Clinton, that's why you're here. And so you've done a great job setting us up so far. So take us into the next set of what you've got going on with the initiative at the university.
Okay, to answer your question on whether or not, or how do I learn about my biases, there are a myriad of ways. As I said, biases are influenced by our experience, past experiences, and our upbringing. So we can be self-reflective and think about those things that we tend to think differently about one group or another over. And there are some practical ways, and very easy. Harvard has done a study. It's the IAT test, Implicit Association test, that can be done. And there is a link on our website, our diversity website, which can take you to those tests. And you can learn about personal biases that you may have. The best part about knowing about your personal biases is that you can utilize that information to prepare you for interactions so that you can not allow those biases to move towards discrimination on any one in-group or another. The idea of the university, ATSU, in terms of our diversity idea, is rooted in our diversity definition, which is on our very next slide. And I'll give you and our audience time to read that. But the idea of diversity really is about difference. Diversity in and of itself, when you hear me talk, often you'll say diversity is differences. As a university, we value and appreciate the differences that difference makes. That's what the idea of cultural proficiency is all about, and that's a model that we utilize as far as training and teaching all the time too, the idea of being culturally proficient. If I value and appreciate differences, then I'm more likely to be inclusive, knowing that those differences are going to lead me to a better place in understanding and better outcomes, whether it be the practice or the group that I'm working in. And the next slide goes into the whole idea of cultural proficiency as being a way of being that enables one to interact effectively in different groups. One thing we must understand is that culture is ever changing. This setting that we are in now represents a culture. If one of us leaves, that culture will change. There is a dominant group and a non-dominant group in that culture, just as there is a dominant person and non-dominant person in that culture. How we affect individually that culture is what the idea of cultural proficiency is all about. So if we understand our own biases and how they can affect an individual, and we overcome those biases to interact and engage appropriately in those settings, then we become more of a culturally professional than ever before. The next slide shows us characteristics of culture, which they are the primary characteristics, and they're rooted, or they're situated in our diversity wheel. And the diversity wheel they're situated in is really the organizational structure, because culture exists as an organization. It exists as a unit, a group. It exists within the individual body. There are overarching themes of the idea of culture, which are spiritual, one's religion, one's tradition and practices. We are in healthcare, the healthcare industry, so nutrition obviously is important as a characteristic in our culture. The family traditions and the language that we utilize. One thing that when I first arrived at ATSU, so my first position in graduate health sciences, was that there are a lot of acronyms utilized in this setting, and that was very difficult to overcome or to learn in that first 6 to 8 months. And I'm sure that that is probably the case for a lot of people who come into our community. So knowing this, then we can better prepare ourselves to be more inclusive and welcoming to those people, because there is a learning curve when you're trying to identify or find your way, as it will, in this setting. And the next slide, in terms of the idea of being more culturally proficient, leads us to understand that when, in order to be proficient, you have to understand that anything you do, there's going to be some challenges and some barriers. The cultural proficiency model already sets out the overarching barriers, those challenges, and one is a presumption of entitlement. If we being ATSU, are entitled by being the first osteopathic institution, then we will not seek to improve, seek to further that whole ideology of osteopathy. The importance is that we don't feel that entitlement, so therefore we can always move forward, knowing that we still, as an organization, just as individuals, have some biases, whether they're towards the allopathic approach or not. And then the unawareness of a need to adapt. Healthcare, like any other industry, is ever changing. Education is also ever changing. Our society, we know from a diversity standpoint, is ever changing. And if we don't recognize as individuals, as units, and as a university the need to adapt, which we have, because that's why we have this whole ideology, then we don't move forward in our construct of the idea of diversity and the movement of being more culturally proficient. So, in conclusion, I want us to think about being more self-reflective in how we view cultural proficiency, how we view ourselves in our culture, and then take into account this saying by Gandhi, your beliefs become your thoughts. Be careful that your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts can become your words can become your actions can become your habits can become your values, and consequently, your values can become your destiny.
Very good. Clinton, I'm sure that that's like a little bit of a nutshell of everything that goes into, what you've learned and practiced over the years, and sort of gives us a glimpse into the initiative that the university has launched, partially bringing you in to sort of spearhead that. And so we appreciate you coming in and sharing some of that with us today. If you're like me, there's always questions that you'd like to have asked. I do, again, want to encourage you to use the comment section of the live stream and to get those questions asked so that we can get them answered. We're going to ask Clinton to stick around with us for the rest of today's broadcast, and we will, because we're those kind of people, we'll stop everything, right, just to answer a question. And by the way, Gene is definitely like the cultural driver in the room right now.
Absolutely.
When you were talking about that, I thought of you. If you were to leave, everything changes, and that's the truth. So that's how I know what you say is true. The other thing I think we should do is, if we can get that link to it's on one of the diversity pages.
It's on our diversity page, ATSU homepage, www.atsu.backslash/diversity.
Diversity, and there's like a quiz on there that Gene, you were talking about taking. I would like to make that link available to you because I think it's a great first step. So we'll put that on the live stream there in the forum so that you can use that as well. Okay, let's take a break. It turns out one of the most popular segments during the Lunch and Learn series has been the Microsoft Office tip. And here today to talk about one of the things that has frustrated me the most with Microsoft Word, because it thinks it's the boss of me and wants to tell me what to do, is how to stick a darn picture into the text. Beth has solved it, and here it comes right now with the Microsoft tip.
Welcome back. How many of you have ever tried to add a clip art or picture into a document only to have it not go where you want it to go? The Wrap Text menu item determines how your image aligns with the text. The default text wrapping, the inline with text, attaches the image to wherever you inserted it. It links the graphic to the text, and the graphic cannot be moved away from the text. Square aligns the text around the graphic, leaving a square shape around the graphic. I'm going to move the graphic to the center of the page so you can see better how it works. Tight aligns the text around the graphic, leaving space only in the shape of the graphic. With through, the text is shaped around the graphic, leaving no space. Top and bottom puts the graphic on its own line with text above and below. Behind text moves the graphic behind all of the text. In front of text moves the graphic over the text. Edit Wrap Points works with graphics that are drawing types. This allows you to change the wrapping to a specific shape. More layout options allows you to specify more options in relation to the different wrap text types, alignment on the page, and image size. Once again, please email me if you have any questions, want further instructions, or if you have suggestions for further episodes.
Who knew it was so easy? Those guys are geniuses. I love Beth. Now you see why everybody loves Beth. All right, cool. So hopefully that improved your Microsoft proficiency. Hey, I wanted to show you something before we go to our last segment. I have pulled up here the diversity homepage at atsu.edu. I know you recognize that handsome man. And if you scroll down in the middle of this page, there is a tab called Diversity Education. And if you click there, and then you go down to the middle bullet, it says Project Implicit. And if you click that, it opens up this page. And this is where you can start to evaluate your personal social attitudes, right? That'll start, now Clinton, stop me as soon as I say a word that's wrong. But that's going to start to give you an idea of your own unconscious bias and some of the prejudices that you probably have built into you, right?
Correct. That's absolutely
okay,
correct.
cool. Cool. So that's a good place for all of us to start. I know I intend to do that, and many of you maybe already have. But that's just a sample of the resources that have been put together by ATSU's Diversity Initiative, and I think it's a great first step for us to start to do some of that self-reflection stuff.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, hey, Dustin Usher is here. He's been waiting patiently, spinning circles in his office chair, because he is here today to talk to us about computer safety. Now, I don't know, there he is, Dustin. Dustin, in preparing for this, they printed out a bunch of sheets of paper for me with really scary words on them, like super scary words, like virus and adware and spyware and hijacking and and if I just go through here, I'm terrified. So get us started, set us up a little bit with what the globe of computer security looks like and what's new and trending. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to look over here, because when I look over here, you're there.
Yeah, no problem.
There you are. Okay, good. So get us started. Tell us about, what do you got with computer security today?
Yeah, so, cybersecurity is on everybody's mind. I mean, even Obama now, there's an initiative, and they're pouring money into cybersecurity, right? So the fact of the matter is if it's on the network or internet, it can be cracked or hacked. An example is a few years back in San Francisco, there was a business that had parking meters that had embedded operating systems, and someone hacked into those and was siphoning off thousands of dollars. Needless to say, they found the hole and patched it, but anything can be hacked into. So what I want to do is, let's see what we can do to make our end devices safer. I think the most important thing is antivirus. Every mobile device, laptop, desktop should have some sort of antivirus on it. On Windows, you have Microsoft Security Essentials. On Windows 8 and above, that comes already pre-installed. On Mac, you have Sophos, which is free as well. And then on mobile devices like Android and iPhones, you have something called Lookout. And people might be saying, mobile devices, why do we need to have antivirus on our mobile phones? And again, there's another little thing in the news about the NATO and U.S. allies were getting attacked from Russia. What was called Operation Pawn Storm, where they were getting these malicious software onto these folks' mobile cell phones and siphoning off their personal information, recording phone calls, and just gathering whatever they could. So it is important to have it on mobile devices as well. You just got to weigh out the risks. Do you want to have your personal data stolen, or you want to just use a little bit of resources to have the lookout program on there, which doesn't really cost a lot as far as resources are concerned. Next, I would say to have your local firewall on your Mac and your Windows. They all come with a local firewall. If you turn that on, that will protect you from many people trying to break into your computer, and that comes already pre-installed. Just make sure it's on. The next would be patch management, or what everybody knows as updates. Now, on the Windows side, you have Windows Update, which happens automatically. As long as it's turned on, you can schedule it. On the Mac side, you have Software Update, and you need to turn that on as well. And then especially important is those third-party apps, so like Java and Adobe Flash. Those need to be updated manually, but those are some of the most important ones to keep updated because they're always finding different security holes in those. And then lastly on those is any other program that you may have downloaded. You want to make sure you have the most up-to-date version on that, just to save you any hassle. And the new ones also patch the security holes in those as well. So even though you may think you have all these things on your end device, there's still security holes. One more thing I'd like to mention about that though is any external devices you may have attached to your laptops. External hard drives, USBs. There was an example of a decryptor virus, which if it gets on your computer, encrypts all your files and then makes you pay for it to get them unencrypted. The thing is, if you have your external hard drive or device plugged into that as well, it also decrypts those files. So it's good not to have that plugged in your computer as well.
This is a drill. Tornado warning drill. Go to a safe area.
The next thing that I'd like to talk about is safe.
Tornado warning drill.
Hang on, Dustin. I'm climbing under my table. We're having a tornado warning drill here in Kirksville, so I think we're all safe because we're already in the basement. So go ahead, man. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, did you guys get the external hard drive piece?
Yeah. If you have it plugged in, it gets messed up too, right?
Exactly. So it's a good idea to keep that unplugged so you don't get those encrypted as well if you do happen to get that virus, and it makes it pass your antivirus.
Cool. So, okay, here again, I know what's happening. People are watching this, and I've already thought of a couple of questions. First of all, I'm terrified, and I'm turning everything off, ever. But before I do that, when I turn on a local firewall, and I'm thinking mostly of my work computers, are those firewalls on right now? Do they come defaulted that way? Or
So usually they come defaulted on, yes. You have to go in there and turn it off for them to be off.
Okay. So I've got the firewall on my computer at work is probably on.
Right.
Right. And
sorry about that. In lieu of that, let me interject something. In lieu of that, we have also on our enterprise network, we have hardware firewalls and security systems protecting our internals. But for local users outside, like home users, they need to make sure that's on. You see what I mean? They don't have that extra protection that we do on our network.
Okay, but your advice is still, even if I'm working in my office on campus, I should have my local firewall on as well.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Okay, next question. You mentioned that updates are a really important part of the security profile for someone who wants to stay. Are my automatic updates on now? How do I figure that out?
Yeah, so as far as it's going to be different now. So for enterprise, we actually have servers that divvy out those updates to all of our users.
When you say enterprise, you mean anybody at ATSU that's working?
Exactly. All of our ATSU employees and staff. We control all those updates personally.
Okay.
But for end users, they're off campus, they will need to go into their Windows updates and make sure that it's on.
Okay. And that's a pretty simple thing for me to figure out. There's probably a lynda.com tutorial on that.
That's a very good thought, yes.
That's a gimme for the mug. By the
I'll
time I
take a
figure out
mug
how
too,
to
you know?
install all this stuff, I'll be the winner.
I learned
for
everything
March.
I know on lynda.com here, guys.
Good to know. Good to
I'll get the
know.
very short.
So is it possible to get to a point, Dustin, where we're fully protected, or is this just a sort of making it as hard as possible, or what do you think?
That's a good question. So yeah, we're never going to be totally secure. It's just not possible. The security posture is changing daily, if not by the minute, because everybody's always come up with new software, new technologies to try to get into systems. So you're never going to be 100% secure, but these are steps that should be taken to make it harder for an individual to get in. And that's really what it comes down to, just making it harder for them. They're always going to go for the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Right. It's like I heard a story once that if you just lock your front door, that deters like 9 out of 10 home invasions because they're not interested in trying to bust the door down. They'll find somebody who's got the door unlocked.
Exactly. And that brings up a good point about your workstations there at ATSU. If you just hit the Windows L key, that locks your computer. So
Windows and
it should be in the left-hand side with a little window.
All clear.
Hang on.
This concludes the drill. All clear. This concludes the drill.
He's going to say it again.
Thank you.
Oh, no. We're good. Good news, Dustin. The tornado went right over us.
Good. You guys are safe over there?
Yeah, we're good. So you were saying, so you mean the little window, the thing that has the Windows icon on it, and then
Right.
L?
And then the L key, and it locks it, and then that saves somebody from going to your computer and just having complete access logged in as you.
Cool. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Oh, I did not know that.
You just taught the diversity director something new today. That's tough. Cool. Well, what else, Dustin? You want to wrap us up, or I kind of interrupted you? So what else?
No, that's great. I love the questions. One last thing I wanted to touch on, though, was a couple items actually with safe browsing and email phishing. You know,
Okay.
people get, emails daily, I'm sure, here's a link, win $1,000. Well, who doesn't want to win $1,000, right? Well, yeah, they're just enticing you to click on there to divulge some kind of personal information or as a link to one of their servers off site to get you to get their malicious program on your computer. So you really want to be mindful and safe as far as and cognizant of what we're really clicking on, and is it really from the source? An example would be from like a bank, like Wells Fargo. If you get an email from Wells Fargo saying, click here to change your password, you probably don't want to do that because that link will be redirected to their malicious site, and then you're just giving them your information. So you don't want to do that. You'd want to go directly to the website to change it, or call Wells Fargo and say, I got this email from you guys. What's going on here? Do you guys have any problems or whatnot? So that's very important.
Cool.
Last thing I wanted to touch on was home network. 3 things to make your home network stronger as far as your wireless access point would be having a strong password and using the WPA2 security, and which is all in the documentation when you get your router, or you can go online to your router model and look it up, and it'll tell you exactly how to set that. Turning off universal plug and play, and basically what that is, it'll be a setting within your router as well. You can turn that off because what that allows, it allows devices to more easily connect on your network and see other devices on your network. And it also sends out little beacons anybody attacking can get on as well. And also you want to turn off the WPS setting, which allows people to connect more easily to your network by using a numeric key. And people can brute force that a lot easier. And by brute force, meaning attack it and just try a bunch of different combinations until they get in. So those are some of the tidbits I had for keeping you more secure. And if those are followed, it's definitely going to make it a lot harder for an attacker to get into your system.
Cool. I have to admit, I'm still scared. That's a lot, man. It's kind of scary, but I feel like what you're saying is there are some pretty simple precautions that we can take that for the vast majority of attackers we're going to be uninteresting because we're just too difficult, and there's going to be easier people who didn't watch the Lunch and Learn today, and their stuff is going to be way easier to get into, right?
Yeah,
that's what you're saying?
That's exactly it, right? You're not going to go to the car that has that steering wheel lock, right? You're going to go to the next one and steal it.
Yeah, right. We have the steering wheel lock
That's
now.
right.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Dustin, thanks so much for taking the time to spend with us. I appreciate it. Hey, I've been watching, and am I wrong? I haven't seen questions pop up on here, and that's okay. We know you're busy. I mean, between the sandwich and the whatever drink holder you have that is not a lynda.com mug, that's me gloating, you got your hands are tied up. Now, here's what we can do. This session is going to be available on ATSU's live stream page. And again, that's live.atsu.edu. For those of you that intend to go back and gloat that now your computer is safe and you're going to beat everyone else in the next lynda.com challenge, you can do that. And at the same time, you can say if you want to know what it was about, go to live.atsu.edu and you can watch the recorded version of this session there. Thanks to Clinton for spending your time with us today. We appreciate it. Thank you, Dustin. And once again, these people are available to email or to contact at any time. I know Clinton has been incredibly helpful as we prosecute new initiatives through the university. A lot of times you've actually been asked to come in and consult on that. And make sure we help remove. Do you want to talk about that for just a second?
I would. That would be a perfect opportunity to make a plug about the opportunities for us to provide diversity training, whether it's in a school or a group or just a unit. We can do that at the request of either of those entities. I also make a plug for this, as you know, is Women's History Month. The SNMA here in Kirksville is having a diversity week, which starts tomorrow, and they're having 3 events during the week, which are online for you to discern when they are, and hopefully those on the Kirksville campus can join. There are several diversity groups that exist on our campuses. In Mesa, we have the CCEC, Cultural Competence and Education Committee on Diversity, and we also have the SOMA Diversity Group in Mesa. Here we have the Diversity Enrichment Committee, which is, these groups are help facilitate the idea of diversity for the institution. Safe Zone is a fantastic program that exists on both campuses, which affords one the opportunity to demonstrate his or her welcoming environment and appreciation for differences. So I encourage all of you to take advantage of these opportunities, join these groups, get involved. Go to our website and find out more about the idea of diversity, find out more about these events and activities, and help us move this initiative forward.
Very cool. Hang on, I'm receiving a message. Wow, your handwriting is terrible. How often are ATSU computers scanned, Dustin? There's a question for you.
Scan those weekly, every Sunday.
Cool. What's a scan even mean? What does that mean?
So basically, we have an enterprise antivirus system from Trin Micro, and we have that on all of our end user workstations. Mm-hmm. So I have it set up to monitor them, first of all, so live monitoring, and also do a complete full scan of all the drives on that local machine every Sunday.
Wow, very good.
And then what happens is we'll get a report that next day saying, hey, I found this, this, and this on this computer and cleaned it or quarantined it.
Right. All right, cool. Very good. Thank you for that. And Gene, your handwriting is beautiful. I'm sure it's my eyes. That has to be what it is. You never mess with the cultural driver in the room. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, the dominant culture.
That's right. That's right. I got to get my terminology right. Okay. Hey, look. It is 1:45. We are wrapping this session up. Again, if you have questions or comments that you think of at a later time, do let us know. We'd like to pass those on, help you get them answered. Thanks again to Clinton and Dustin for taking the time to spend with us. My name's Joe. You have now lunched and learned, and we will look forward to seeing you the next time. Have a good one.
Thank you.